Welcome to The Overcomers, where stories of healing, courage, and faith shine bright. Join us for a powerful new episode as we sit down with Sarah, a devoted wife, mom, and grandmother from California, who has overcome the voice that said, hide, and now courageously steps forward to encourage others. Sarah carries a deep compassion for the brokenhearted, bringing comfort, hope, and light to those walking through difficult seasons. On this channel, we celebrate the brave journey of overcoming fear, embracing purpose, and becoming who you were always meant to be. Get ready to be inspired.
I'm honored to be here today with my friend Sarah. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today on The Overcomers.
Thank you for having me, Jen. Yay!
So, in case as you're listening, you don't know Sarah, like I have had the pleasure of getting to know her. She's a devoted wife, a mom, and a grandma joining us from California. She's overcome a lot in life, including even the overcoming the voice that said hide in showing up for this very interview today. She's now on a mission to help come beside women and those who carry heavy hearts. But what I'm blown away most by with you, Sarah, is your heart. He has truly gifted you with such a powerful one. You truly carry his, and you can feel it just by being within your proximity. There's a verse that says, he is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. That closeness that you hear in that passage is of someone who really cares, so much that they choose to come close in those moments. That's you, Sarah. You carry that heart, his heart, the heart that sees us and says, I see that you're in great pain that is beyond words, and I'm going to choose to come next to you and just sit with you, to let the warmth of my spirit, my compassion, and my light bring whatever ounce of comfort that I can, because I care. And you do it generously, and he overflows through you in that space simply because of who you are and what you carry, and you are trusted with his heart because you worship him and you give him the glory. So without further ado, so excited to have Sarah on so that she can share more of her story, as I've had the privilege to get to know it with us today. So Sarah, take us on the journey of who he's been to you, how you went from someone who used to hide to is now showing up on an interview today.
Ah, so I I definitely want to start by saying I'm going to share some of my testimony today. I want to start by saying my son's alive. This is a pretty traumatic testimony that I'm going to share. But I do want to start with that he is alive. He's 21 now, and it was 19 years ago when this event happened in my life. And I'm just wanting to just share my heart and my journey that I went on from that traumatic event that I went through all the way to sitting in this interview today, and how God has so graciously walked with me every single day, all the way up to this morning, or even yesterday when I kept hearing a familiar voice saying hide and retreat, and fighting back in worship, and just saying no, and stepping out and believing that God wants me to share this testimony with everyone. He's worth it. He's worth it. And this journey that he took me on, like I said, he's still doing it today. Like, here I am. Here I am, Lord, send me, through surrender.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you mentioned your son. Yeah, tell us that story of what happened.
Okay. So when my son was 2, my husband and I were home alone at the time. It was Super Bowl Sunday. And we were just hanging with our little guy, Sean. And like I said, he was 2. And it started to rain outside. Well, we had a boat at the time, and my husband and I ran outside to cover it really fast. And then Shawnee was in the window, like talking to us. And while we were covering it and we run back in out of the rain, he had tangled a cord around his neck from our blinds. And my husband found him, and he was not breathing. And so he untangled him and performed CPR on him. And we jumped in the truck and drove to the ER here in town. So we're from a really small town. There's about 8,000 people here. So me going 100 to the hospital down the turning lanes was no problem, just to get us to the hospital in time for him. In the meantime, my husband was doing CPR. And so we arrived at the emergency room, and the crew just dove in and started doing CPR on him and working on him. And in that meantime, I shut down into a place of shock. I could see what was going on in the ER. I can see them working on him, but I couldn't hear anything, and I couldn't speak, and I couldn't move. I was in a space of, I was frozen. Come to find out, I talked to God about that. It's just a way for him to kind of encapsulate me in grace, and be still and allow him to work. But at the time, I felt very helpless, and I couldn't do anything. And my husband was over next to him during this time, and he looked at me without saying anything. I saw in his eyes, we lost our baby. And when he had just looking at me and we locked eyes when they were still working on him, come to find out later, the nurses shared with me, a lot of them would say, do you remember? Do you even know what happened that day? Do you realize what happened that day? And I would always say no, because I wasn't fully present to the whole thing. But the nurses said, we worked on him for 36 minutes. So after 36 minutes, he took his first breath. He came back. So in that bombshell of a miracle that he came back, because the nurses and the doctors later said, a child that age, gone that long, they usually don't come back. So my little guy, try to speed this up a little bit, but he was unconscious, but he was alive. So they said, prepare, we're going to fly him out. It's a 3-hour, drive for you guys, but we're going to fly him out and to the children's hospital, and he'll be there, waiting for you. But be ready and prepared that, prepared for the worst when you do get there, because it'll take you a while to get there. It was the worst. It was the worst of the worst that my husband and I had to go through. But we did show up to the children's hospital, and fast forwarding, he did wake up, and the doctors told us to go ahead and have a seat, that he needed to talk to us. And he was laying on this board with he was strapped to a board. And so he was awake, but not talking. But the doctor put up the brain scan on this light and said, I'd just like you guys to look at this brain scan of your son that we were able to take. And he said, there's not one cell in his brain that is damaged. Not one. They said, he's perfect, and he's going to be just fine. And we're going to monitor him, but God performed a miracle on your babe. So that's the blast. Okay. I'll start with that in saying that our lives were forever changed. Yeah. That sent my husband and I into, it flipped our world upside down. Our baby was okay. He came home. There's more miracle to it, because when he came home, he was even more advanced than he was when the accident happened. He would just pick up puzzles, and he just had knowledge. He was just like, and we were like, both my husband and I were like, oh my gosh, just trying to collect ourselves to what happened, but he was good to go. And so we both had our own path from there to walk. My husband, he had the trauma of doing the CPR. He had the trauma of finding his baby that way. he had the trauma that would show up. He works for a company that says that he has to do CPR classes. So once a year he'd go do that, and then it would send him into a panic. So he had some physical trauma from that day that he had to work through that was different than mine. But for me, I came out so afraid of life. I was celebrating the life of my guy, that he's alive. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. He's a miracle, and I'm able to hold my baby. And like I said, he was 2 years old, little towhead, the sweetest little guy, big blue eyes. But I would smell him, and it would send me into that panic, or I would feel him, and it would send me into the panic. And so I was like, okay, Lord, like, this is not living, right? Like, I'm like, what's going on right now? Why do I feel like I'm grieving, but he's alive? Why am I feeling these feelings? And so I got real with God after that, real. And so did my husband. It brought my husband to his knees. He gave his life completely to Jesus. And so our journey began. That looked different than before that, right? So I felt super vulnerable. I felt exposed to the world and the what ifs, could have happened. I had 2 other children that I had to still raise, but then I felt half of a mother than I was before. So I met Jesus at my table every single day with my journal and with my Bible. And I just said, okay, I'm meeting you right here. We need to talk because I am freaking out. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to live this way, but I know you're good and I believe in you, but like, I need to know you more. Like, I was so in searching of the heart of who Jesus is tangibly. Like, I needed him to save me and save my husband. So my journey began, and I met him every day. My kids would go down for their naps and go to school. And I said, okay, I'm here. And I would sit and I journal. And a lot of times we'd speak back and forth in my journals. And I was crying out one day, and I said, you said you took the sting from death. And it stings. I mean, he's here, but I smelt it. I felt it. I encountered all of that. And so this is the day, this is when I went on my journey with God. And this is what I'd love to share with you guys, because he met me at the table every single day. And in my state of surrendering to him, I was also crying out, here I am, Lord, send me to go wherever you need me to go, or do anything that you need me to do. Because he had given me like an invitation to go down a different road. I had a crossroad to stay where I was, to live this life this way, and allow basically a place of torment and torture, internally and mentally. And he was inviting me to walk a different path with him that was lit with love. And I chose him, and I said yes. So my journey starts to unfold and unpack from there. He had taken me to go work in hospice. So it was a journey that had to deal with what I had asked him at the table. It was an answer to what I had asked him at the table, and what I was seeking, and what was going to ultimately set me free. But I didn't know. I just knew that every day I had a yes in my heart. I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know how long it was going to take. Every single day, I just met him at the table again. I met him at the table again. And my husband was really inspired by that. He was like, you did it personally. You didn't get it through a pulpit, or you didn't get it through this or that. You did it on your knees every day, every single day. Jesus, I am here. Meet me here. And he did. So he took me into hospice. So I'll jump to the next chapter here. In hospice, I was bedside with people that were passing, and he was allowing me to see death firsthand. This is life. They're breathing. This is death. They're not breathing. But he was allowing me to see that he was in both. And it was my first aha moment or awakening where I was like, okay. And that was a part of the healing process, that there was so much grace for those that were passing to the other side and the families that would be there. And I had witnessed a spirit leave and a wind chime go. So he was even like showing me how real the spirit realm was. There was so much more that he was unpacking for me, that I was a child and a student, but I was walking on the path of love. And so he took me deep waters pretty quick. Before that I worked in daycare, and the things that I did before that and before having children was not hospice. It was a total different world. But through my Shawnee's miracle, he was then equipping me to walk into these places. And I knew that too. I knew that when I'd walk through with different people that were passing, once they would leave and I would be with the families, and I'd go home and meet them at the table. I was like, wow, you did gird up my legs. You held me up when it was really sad on watching people grieve. And it was deep waters. The next chapter, when I was in hospice, they took us on a tour of the mortuary. And we have a real small mortuary here in town, and bless their hearts, but it is old and smelly and cold. And I mean, we just walked through there, and they were giving us a tour of it. And I heard the Lord speak, "I want you to work here." And I was like, completely like, what? Like, I can't wait to get out of here. I want to leave. We're just touring. We're not staying, right? But that's a part of the journey. That's a part of being obedient. That's a part of being tuned to his voice, and knowing that I know that he had brought me there for a reason. And so I was developing this relationship with him that was ever expanding to a new awareness of our love relationship, and that I could trust him, and that he was taking me to the next layer or level of learning. So I ended up working at the mortuary. I did body pickups, funerals, and it was a year, and it was rough waters. And a part of that testimony, I would say, is I would cry out to Jesus and just like, can I go now? Can I go now? Like, it's so like alive in that part of my life. I just remember crying out, can I leave? Can I go now? Because I never wanted to go in there. I was in there because he wanted me to be in there. So I kept asking him for permission to allow me to leave. And he would be so clear, and he'd say, no, not yet. No, not yet. And I would share it with my husband after being called out to do body pickups in the middle of the night, driving in the mountains, because we live in the hills here. So I'm driving out, getting bodies, and it was a wild ride, to say the least. And I would come home and I would tell my husband, like, I cried out, and he said, not yet. Because my husband's like, what are we doing? What? He was even having a hard time with his wife leaving in the middle of the night to do the things I was doing and seeing the things I was seeing. It was rough. So that went on for a whole year, and I learned so much about death. I was able to come up next to it and not be afraid of it for the first time. It was not in charge of my heart, mind. It had shifted from when I first cried out. And through that process, I was able to be with the families, where that really fueled my heart for those that are in grief. And so it was almost like, death, I see you, but God, right? There was so much more going on that was so full of life, even though the death was there.
Yeah.
And sometimes super traumatic deaths where, you know, there would be screaming, crying, and things that just would like shred my heart. And I would go into the back room with my Bible and cry, like, can I leave now? And not yet. Get back out there. I'm like, okay. So I'd go back out there and he would hold me up and allow me to wrap them up, and just the sounds of even children crying. It was just a real hard season to walk through. But God, again, was revealing himself. He was revealing his love in the midst of the grief. He was revealing his, steadfast. He never left. And he also, the power, the death didn't have power. He had power. And I can see it because that would shrink and then he would rise and fill the room. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, you're almighty. You're here. You're hugging these babies and their mamas, and you're here and you're flowing through me to hug your babies and their mamas. And this exchange encounter with the love of the Father for his children was, again, ever expanding my understanding of who he is. And I was still in school about what I had asked them. So I was starting to understand, okay, hospice, okay, the mortuary, but can I leave now? I had that. And then I have to share how it ended, because I had went and picked somebody up that had passed, took them back to the mortuary, and through the process, you have to take them into a refrigerator and do the process. And I was there by myself. It was the middle of the night, and I can't even say it, but toe tag, all the things. And so I was in that space that was so creepy and so cold when I first started the journey, had changed. I was able to adapt to the environment that I was in. The environment didn't have the ultimate say. He was showing me through me, we had the ultimate say. I was in that refrigerator and I cried out and I said, can I go? And he said, yes. And the refrigerator lit up and I felt his presence fill it. And it was like almost like the closing curtain. Like he was like, this is what we traveled a whole year to get to this minute right now. You and me in the fridge, like everything in it was so like solid and clear and real. And he said, yes. And then he took me through like a open vision in my mind. He took me in almost like a rewind thing, like a movie rewinding in my mind, took me to the kitchen table. And he said, do you remember asking me about him taking the sting of death away on the cross? Asking me that. And I said, and I saw myself. I actually saw myself on that day, whether to be a Tuesday at 3:00. I saw myself sitting there years later. He had shown me myself, and I said, I remember that. I remember asking you that. And he said, this is that. So where he had taken me next to those that were passing, next to those that had passed and the families along the way, took me to this place and time in that refrigerator for him to show his presence. Literally, like I saw the place light up. I saw the vision. And he had said, I am in all things.
Yes.
All things. Nothing is outside of me. And by then I got it, right? Like by then we had to go through as far as we had to go through, as long as we had to go through for that moment in time, for him to show himself to be in all things. Nothing is outside of him. Death does not have power. It doesn't have a sting. It is all in all in the heart of who he is. And I can rest in there. And what he had done is he was stripping me of the fear. The fear had no place in the fullness of his love. And I read it in the Bible, perfect love casts out fear. But to read it and to know it and to encounter it and experience it is a whole other thing that he equipped me to now walk in. Now I have a passion for the grieving. I have a passion for anybody and all people that are walking through there. I'm still a student. I still have, living relatives, and, things happen, and I'm still every day like a student in this, that when I walk through here, I know that I know that I know that he's in it. There's no separation anymore. And when I was in the mortuary, I have to say as well, I was able to be there with Eric's grandmother and wrap her up and honor her. And another family member had been taken from us through murder. But I was able to be the last person to love her. And I looked back and I was looking at all these things he did along the way, and allowed me to be there, and if he would have let me leave earlier, I just think it wouldn't have been complete. I don't know. Now I know, because the complete shift from fear to love and the intimacy with Jesus that I found every day in surrendering. And I came through there, and he took me out of the mortuary, took me into the hospital. I worked in the hospital, worked in registration and in the surgery department. Now the hospital, I was like, okay, all right. I already had a passion for the medical field. They were angels. They were amazing to our family and to my baby. And I'd seen them work. And so when he brought me to the hospital, I was honored. I was like, oh my gosh, here's a huge place full of people that need him. Use me as you please. And every day, I'm telling you, I had rough days. I had hard years. I was there for 8. But man, I knew I was on a mission field every day. I was honored to be his, and I was honored. And I had, at one point, I'll have to share this. My husband brought it up last night. I was in the registration department, and there was 3 booths, and I'd always have my worship music playing low underneath my desk. And we found that people would come in to register, but to have an encounter with him. And I was like, wow, Lord, people are being just rocked by your love. Like, we're the first person they see when they walk through the door, full of fear and unknowing and diagnoses that are saying something about them, and a few different times there would be a bunch of people in the waiting room and nobody else registering, and they'd be like, they're all waiting for you. And I was like, so honored, but I'm honored because they're wanting you.
Yes.
They want another encounter. They felt something last time they came through booth 3 and his name is Jesus. Yeah. And so Eric brought that up last night. I was like, oh yeah, that was so sweet. And I did a few things in the hospital that, I was a chaplain assistant. So I was able to go bedside and pray for people that were sick. And then I also had access to the NOTA program, that Nobody Dies Alone. So I'd sit with people as they were passing, that didn't have families. So he blessed my socks off into that part of my life as well. Coming to the end of this testimony is, it all wraps around back to the kitchen table. And meeting him and seeking him and surrendering the pain I felt and the fear I felt and the unknowing and the worry and the concern. And this place was just a scary place to call home. Like, how am I supposed to exist in a world where bad things could happen at any moment? I had those cords I'd seen on a Maury show, somebody, like a little guy getting tangled in those. So I always had them up. So the one thing that I always had up got my baby. Like, I'm just like, what the world?
Yeah. Wow, friend. Talk about casting out all fear. Wow. But I can totally see how he had prepared you for that moment in your life. And in the moment, I love how you said and painted such a perfect picture of, he encapsulated me in his grace. I can see how he continued to encapsulate you because of your choice to continue meeting with him at that kitchen table. What do you think it was? Which, by the way, thank you for circling back to that, because I was going to circle back to it too, because I can tell it was such a powerful part of the journey. What do you think it was that made you say yes to him when he gave you that choice to either keep partnering with panic and fear, or what was truly going to set you free?
Um, I think the drastic physical, um, the way that I was reacting, it was so drastic. It was like I was somebody right before that accident, and I was somebody totally different.
Mm,
And so I had that just stark like realization that like this is my new life. Like this is my new reality. Like um and so for something to impact me in such a negative way, just as much as in my knowing and believing that Christ is real, that he then too could change the state of my new reality. Like
yeah.
I just had that faith that he's good, and that I wasn't going to continue to live my life that way. I just was like, I don't want to live this way. Um, if that's answering the question,
Yeah.
I hope.
You could hear his heart and his invitation, like going back to some of the first words you said. He walks with us and it's worth it. And if you've been listening to Sarah's story, I'm sure many of you are like, how can she say that? That's so much trauma. That's so much intensity to have to walk through the things that you've walked through. And by the way, I know that there's more. I mean, this is just one moment that kicked off this part of the journey. So to be able to say with your mouth, he walks with us and it's worth it on the other side of that is so powerful. But I think it's going back to what you're getting at, is that he truly gave you a moment in life where he gave you an invitation of like, hey, do you want to do this with me? Do you want to walk with me? You don't have to do this alone. I can see everything that you're in, and I know you see it, but you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
And so you
Yeah.
said yes.
Like the love light of
Yeah.
an invitation is the way I can describe it. It was like a love light on a path, and it was a path that I was going to have to step onto. I was going to have to take that step if I wanted to, if my heart was yes.
Yeah.
Um, but I know where this path was taking me. I already knew I was well on that path for a long ways, and the darkness and littleness I felt, the hiding, the younger girl in me hid in dark places because for multiple reasons. And going through your identity code masterclass, I was able to see that.
Mm,
I was like, oh, I see you.
mm,
And it was like, it was something that I did to protect myself, and I would hide into dark places, and the world would be going on. Like my family would be having birthday parties and laughing and living life, and I would be the little girl. I'd be underneath my grandma's dress, and I would feel safety, and everybody would laugh at me. I remember hearing that too, like, oh, Sarah, hiding under grandma's dress. But it was safe to me. And so I saw that kind of start continuing to play in my life. Like, I'm like, oh, it reminds me of being under my grandma's dress and hiding in the dark places, because the world was too overwhelming for me.
yeah.
The energy was too overwhelming with me. I was sensitive. I was shy, and I saw that when I was at the table with him too. I was like, I am scared, and I felt vulnerable, and there was nowhere to hide but in him.
Mm,
Only option I had was to hide in him, and that he was going to cover me. But it wasn't going to be dark, because from that moment, he had shown me that there was a ripple effect that was happening from this miracle. He said, this isn't just for you, and it's not just for Eric and your and the siblings and Shawnee. This is going to touch a lot of lives. And so I would tell his teachers, he'd go to kindergarten, and they're like, he is just the smartest kid. He's the smartest kid in my class. And I go, let me tell you a little story about Sean and how Jesus saved him. So Jesus was the centerpiece. My son is saved, and he's very smart, and I give him yay, Shawnee. But Jesus,
Yeah.
Jesus, and his teachers would cry and coaches would cry. And when he'd be on the football field, and I'm like, he's really a leader, and he's just has this light about him. Let me tell you about Sean. So his testimony of life was played out through my son's life. And this testimony, when I had asked Jesus, what would you like me to share? Because this is just one of
Yeah.
them. You think this would be it, but there's more testimonies where he has shown himself, and the ripple effect. And he goes, I'm not done. So that's why I'm here today. I'm
Yeah.
out of the dark and into the light. I said yes to his invitation. I said yes to your invitation. Thank you. And I'm believing that, he's not done yet. He's got more. He's got more for me. He's got more for anyone watching this. That, if we're stuck in that place, for me, it was intimacy. It was it was getting real with him. I mean, that's where it started for me. Is ground zero.
Yeah. Such a good way of explaining it and saying it. I really saw two different roads ahead. And so I want to ask you, if someone's listening to this interview and, maybe it's dawning on them, yeah, the road that I'm looking at ahead right now is very dark. It's full of panic. It's full of fear. I don't want to keep heading down that road. What one thing would you say to that person who might be listening right now? What would you say to them?
I would say the same man, Jesus, that reached his hand out to me is reaching out to them. The same Jesus, the same Jesus that saved me from the pit of despair and a bleak path, ultimately for destruction, whatever that might have looked like. That he's very much, he's real and tangible and personal, and loves to hear the details, even the raw ones, even the ones that had snot bubbles or whatever, like the times where I was angry, like he still loved me.
Mm.
And that's what I would say. I would just say that it's Jesus. It all goes back to him. He's this close. He's this close. He's not a far away God that we have to go try to find. Um, it was just plopping down with my journal, plopping down with the Bible and saying, I'm desperate for you. I need you. I can't do this without you. And he said, okay, let's go.
Yeah. So yeah, friend, if you're listening to this interview and that's what you see ahead, you see that bleak, dark, scary road. You heard it straight from Sarah. Say yes. Say yes to the invitation that's being put in front of you right now by the one who created you, by the one who sent his son to die for you, who loves you, who wants to sit with you and walk with you in it, just as he has walked with Sarah, just as he has walked with me. It doesn't have to look the way that you think it looks right now. There's another option, there's another choice, and it's as simple and as easy as Sarah said it. Just say yes. Just say yes. He's waiting and
Yeah.
ready to walk with you too.
Yeah.
Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today on The Overcomers. Thank you for sharing just a small glimpse of your story. Man, as I was listening to you today and just getting to know more details of it, I'm like, man, if we could have her here for hours and it would be so powerful, which we might have to do another one with you at some point because
Oh,
I know you got more.
I love it. Yeah.
But seriously, so, so, so grateful that you chose to say yes to the interview, to push past that voice that said hide. I almost said hi. To push past that voice that said hide and show up today. And you didn't just show up for you. You showed up for the one that's listening that truly needed this message, needed a word of hope, and needed that invitation to say yes to and walk with them through whatever they have to face. So thank you for your courage. Thank you for bringing that heart. Thank you for bringing that light into another dark space today. So proud of you, friend, and so grateful that I get to do life with you. Sorry, everybody else, but she's like now my neighbor, so I get to do life with her.
I mean, all I can hear from when you're sharing that is thank you. And I'm honored. I am honored to have been used today. I'm honored that you asked me for the interview, and I'm honored that he's using me, you know, even though I'm walking through it, even in this season, that it had to be, I had to shove into my yes to come and show up today. But he's faithful, and I'm so grateful and happy that I did. It's worth it. He's worth it.
Oh, it's worth it. The yes is worth it. Hear that?
Yes. Worth the risk. I'm telling you.
Amen.
Thank you for joining us on The Overcomers today. Remember, no matter what you've carried or where your journey began, you have the power to release the weight and rise above it. Subscribe for more stories of hope, transformation, and the strength within every overcomer. Until next time, stay strong, stay hopeful, and keep overcoming.